Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be making a simple set of soap dishes that I was asked to make for a friend. I have mixed up some Let's Resin 1-to-1 ratio by volume, about 8 ounces, and I'm going to fill these about, just enough to cover that center piece there. So they're a little over half full. And what I'm going to be doing is putting flowers and shells inside of the molds and making a pretty floral not coaster. We're not doing coasters today. A pretty soap dish for her bathrooms. And of course, I had to have a little fleck of something in there that I had to get out. There's always something dropping in my resin. I'm going to hit this very quickly with my lighter just to get out any extra bubbles. I did let the resin set for about 5 minutes after mixing, just to let some of the extra bubbles get out. Definitely a video for the beginner. If you are not a beginner, you're going to be incredibly bored. These are some shells that I got from Bonita Beach in Florida, Bonita Springs, Florida. And I do have some that I purchased as well, but these ones came right out of the Gulf of Mexico. So I'll be adding a few of these in to each of these soap dishes. I'm probably going to say coasters. I have coasters on the brain. I've been making a lot of coasters lately. So if I misstep and say coaster, sorry. These are quite simple to do and they're fun and they're so pretty. These are some starfish that I got on Amazon, and I will have all the products I use today, if I purchased them and not got them from the beach itself, in the description below. So I'm just going to put a starfish in each of these, and starfish like to float. So I have filled these molds just over half, so it's covering that little center circle you see for a reason. I do want these to float a little bit because if they stick down to the bottom, which is actually the top of your project when you demold it, sometimes you can get little pits. So I try to have just enough resin in there and not take the resin to the top of the mold, but just a little over that hump. And then I add my shells and eventually here my flowers. I am going to try to get some resin into these holes, because they will float forever and ever and never set in the right way, just because there's air obviously in them. So I want to make sure I get a little resin in them. And even when I place the shells, I kind of dip them a little bit in the resin to make sure that there's no air behind the shells or bubbles forming, if you will. So the same thing here. I'm just going to place this in here and hold it under the resin a little bit. If it does sink to the bottom, it's not necessarily going to hurt anything, but again, I don't mind a little bit of floating because it keeps those pits from forming. And then, of course, I'm going to drop it in the wrong mold. So, see if I can get this positioned here. My room temperature is about 77, so it's nice and warm. That's important when you're working with epoxy resin. You want the temperature to be somewhere between 74 and maybe 82-ish. And you want to be working on a flat, level surface. And I work on this surface all the time, so I know that it is level and flat. And that's going to keep your molds nice and level. Just going to use this dotting tool and go around the edge a little bit here. Again, when you're working with silicone molds, sometimes the way the resin binds to the mold, you can get some bubbles in there as well. And that will leave pits if you don't get them out. So I learned this little trick by watching other videos. And again, this is definitely for the beginner trying to learn to work with epoxy resin, and it's a very simple project. Just getting rid of some of the bubbles. Again, just go over with the long neck lighter very quickly. Don't want to burn the resin, don't want to burn the mold. You could use a heat gun, maybe a torch, but if you're just starting out, I wouldn't use a torch. You can also spritz with alcohol to get out bubbles. And I'm going to be putting these pretty little teal flowers into the resin. I'm just mixing them into the resin here a little bit. You can dip them in the resin. If you have enough left over on the side, you can dip your flowers in advance and put them in. I highly recommend doing that. Apologies if the hands are in the way. It's very hard when you're a girl with big hands to try to keep them out of the way. So right now, all I am doing is just kind of poking the flowers down into the resin. They are going to float, which is why I don't fill this more than just slightly over half. We'll let it set, and then we'll come back and we'll put another layer of resin over the top. And then you won't see anything floating anymore. It doesn't really make sense probably right now, but when you see the finished product, it'll totally make sense. Suncoast by Sheila, you have to have seashells and starfish, right? All inspired by Gulf Coast living. Just going to get these positioned a little bit better. They will float, they will move. The more you play with them, the more they float and the more they move, even though you hope they would sink a little bit better. Which is why if you dip them in a cup with resin before you put them into your mold, they won't float quite as much. They'll lay down a little bit more nicely. But because I'm going to top coat this, I'm not going to worry about it. Next, I'm going to go to the other mold. These actually are a pinkish purple. They look a little red here, but they're a pinkish purple. And I also got the dried flowers on Amazon. They also have them on Temu. And I like working with the dried pressed flowers versus ones that are not flat and pressed, I guess. You can use the poofy flowers that give that like a whole flower look, but add a little green. I'm just gonna dip this in the mold a little bit into the resin. And this is the fun artistic part. You get to choose whatever colors you want. And at the end of the video, if you stay tuned and stay with me, I'll show you a couple of the other soap dishes that I did that actually have soap in it that I also made, which was also fun, making goat's milk soap, donkey's milk soap, all fun stuff. Pretty purple. Just going to dip that a little bit. And hopefully I won't tear it apart here. Just want to get this positioned. Over that little round center, which is the indentation on the front side of the soap dish where the soap actually sits. So if you worked with these molds, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you'll see at the end what I'm talking about here. I've got this pretty little pink flower. We'll go ahead and put that in here. And I'll tamp that down a little bit. Another little purple baby's breath. This one's really purple. You can tell the color on this one. And where do I want this? Right here. And again, you can move these around once you get going. Let's see, I'm looking for a little more green. One of the things you can do to save time is pick out your flowers in advance, which I clearly did not do. You can dip them in resin and have them ready to go. But I like to create as I go along, so this is really big. I'm going to put this over in this one.
Take me back to the nights we felt alive, picking up the pieces on a summer night. I didn't know that I would feel just like my heart's on fire whenever I'm with you. Cause we go back in time to thrills I miss and all the things I wish we did. All I know is that I need somebody like you. Cause I can't waste another night sitting here alone, hoping for your voice on the telephone. I know it's a supercut as you walk away, playing in my mind all the things I'd never close my eyes. And the sky's on fire. I can't waste another night sitting here alone. We can do it all again, and I'll never let you go. Never gonna let that go. Never gonna let, never let you go. Never gonna let that go. Never let you go. Take me back to another sunrise, back when all I ever needed was by my side. You're a star brighter than Venus, I'm your satellite whenever I'm with you. Cause we go back in time to thrills I miss and all the things I wish we did. All I know is that I need somebody like you. Cause I can't waste another night sitting here alone, hoping for your voice on the telephone. I know it's a supercut as you walk away, playing in my mind all the things I never close my eyes. And the sky's on fire. I can't waste another night sitting here alone. We can do it all again, and I'll never let you go. Never gonna let that go. Never gonna let, and I'll never let you go. No, no. Never gonna let, never gonna let that go. Never gonna let that, never gonna let that go. Never gonna let, and I'll never let you go. Back to the nights we felt alive. We got an insomniac with eyes wide shut, and we got everything we need and then a little too much. I know that you're starving for something you can't touch. Would you be honest with me right now? There's something in the undercurrent, I can feel it coming up. Don't you wanna feel it taking over your senses? Don't you ever fear it? Technologic advances, baby, come escape with me. I'll come sweep you off of your feet. Don't you wanna feel it? Don't you wanna, don't you wanna? Think there's something in my bag that's weighing me down. Oh, it's just the weight of the world. Now I'm calling it out. We're a little starving for some lightning love. Can we speak honestly right now? There's something in the undercurrent, I can feel it coming up. Don't you wanna feel it taking over your senses? Don't you ever fear it? Technologic advances, baby, come escape with me. I'll come sweep you off of your feet. Don't you wanna feel it? Don't you wanna, don't you wanna? It's like a sunrise warming us up, and spending all your...
Now that I have these full, I'm going to pour some of the additional resin over the top of these. Again, I'm not going to take this to where it will be full. I'm not going to fill the molds. I'm only going to go about 3/4 of the way, 2/3 to 3/4 of the way full, because what's going to happen is these flowers are still going to continue to float. And if I were to fill the mold all the way to the top, they would protrude out of the bottom of the mold here, which is the top, the top of the mold that we're looking at, which is the bottom of the soap dish. When you flip it over, it won't be nice and smooth. It would have all of these little rough spots from the flowers and the greens protruding. So what I'll do is let this set overnight. It's not a fast curing resin, so we'll let it set overnight, and then I'll come back tomorrow and I'll put the next layer in. Or you can do it, 3 to 4 hours later. You can add that final top coat of resin if you want to fill the mold. Um, Sometimes if you wait a whole day, you can get a line of demarcation where your first layer of resin that you set is and your new layer. So it's kind of up to you and your personal preference on what you want to do. There's no really right or wrong way. I've done it where I didn't get a line, and then I've done it where I've had a line, but it's such a finite line, you don't really notice it. Let's just get the last bit in here. Looks pretty good. Just kind of do a last minute shift here and make sure everything is where I want it. Don't want my shells hidden by the glass. Okay, I think that one is good. Gonna add another little piece of glass here into this one, being that these flowers are blue. So this is going to be like a teal and blue colored soap dish, and I have a blue rose that's soap that I'll set on top of that. These guys want to shift yet. These are actually staying down pretty good though. Usually I get a little bit more float, which means I dipped them well. It's just a couple adjustments. Not seeing bubbles, which is a good thing. I don't see bubbles, so I'm going to leave this alone and let it set. And we are now back. And I've mixed up another batch of resin. This is about 4 ounces. And I'm going to just pour it over the tops of both of these now, filling the molds completely to the top. And this will eliminate anything from sticking out on the bottom when we demold these tomorrow. All right, we are set. I'm going to hit these with a lighter now, just to make sure that I get any bubbles out that might be in there after putting this new layer of resin on. I wouldn't have hit it with a lighter yesterday when I first put the flowers in. I would spritz it with alcohol. I'm just not sure how well these dried flowers would have done. I'm just going to move these out of the way and come back tomorrow and demold them. So we're good for today. All right, we are on the next day again. So this is day 3. And the backs of these are really smooth, which is perfect. And there's that little indentation I was talking about at the top where the soap sits. No line. Nice and smooth across the back, which is why I do this in stages. Ridges are not there. There's no real sharp edges to these, so I won't need to sand them. I will polish and seal them, however. And there's our blue and white. Lovely. Crystal clear, you can see through, no bubbles, no pits. They came out perfect. And this is the blue rose goat smoke soap I was talking about. Then I've got a pink peony. I probably wouldn't put that on there, but I could if I wanted to, I guess. So making soap is a whole nother tutorial. All in all, I'm happy with these. They look pretty good. The next up, this is a pinkish peony and the lavender on a lavender soap dish with a little bling. And finally the blues and greens and grays. Love this one. All right, that is it for today. I hope you had fun. Thanks for hanging in there. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I always appreciate the thumbs up. Have a great day, everybody, and I will see you again on the next video.